The metallic gray of the asteroid belt stretched endlessly, a graveyard of forgotten stones, caught between the pull of a dying star and the whispers of the void. Mason Cross sat in the cramped cockpit of the Vanguard, his scarred hands deftly adjusting the controls as the ship weaved through jagged debris. His brow furrowed, the faint hum of the engines his only companion. Logan Price lounged in the co-pilot's seat, boots propped up on the dashboard, his cocky grin contrasting the tight quarters. "Another day, another paycheck," Logan drawled, his southern accent dragging out the words. "Think this signal's worth anything, Mason?" "It's worth looking into," Mason replied curtly, his focus never wavering. "You don't ignore a distress call, especially not this deep out." Ethan Hawke, the third member of the crew, stood behind them, arms crossed and eyes scanning the endless stars. A former military engineer, Ethan carried himself with a quiet intensity that contrasted sharply with Logan's laid-back demeanor. The signal had come unexpectedly, breaking through the white noise of the asteroid field. It was weak, almost desperate, but unmistakable, a call for help. The trio, accustomed to scavenging old ships and salvaging tech, hadn't expected much. Yet as the Vanguard drew closer to its source, an unnatural shadow loomed ahead. "That's no ordinary ship," Ethan muttered, stepping closer to the viewport. The vessel came into view slowly, emerging from the darkness like a phantom. Its surface was pocked with jagged holes, its once sleek biomechanical hull now marred by pulsating growths. It was massive, dwarfing the Vanguard in both size and presence. Tendrils of faint bioluminescence flickered along its sides, giving the impression that the ship was alive and suffering. "Sweet mercy," Logan whistled, his boots hitting the floor as he leaned forward. "What in the hell is that thing?" Mason tightened his grip on the controls. "Something that doesn't belong out here, that's for sure." The distress signal grew stronger as they approached, its tone shifting to something almost melodic, like a song sung through static. Mason's fingers danced across the console, translating the alien language into something readable. The words that appeared on the screen were crude but chillingly clear. "Help. Infested. Dying ****. Ethan's jaw tightened. "It's sentient." "Sentient or not," Logan said, "we're not equipped to deal with whatever that is." "We didn't come out here to turn our backs," Mason said firmly. His voice carried the weight of experience, a tone that left no room for argument. "We dock, we assess, we help. That's the job." Logan muttered something under his breath, but began prepping the docking systems. The Vanguard approached the alien ship cautiously, its docking clamps latching onto a section of exposed hull. Mason led the team to the airlock, his tool belt jingling softly with each step. Inside, the air was thick and humid, carrying an acrid tang that clung to their senses. The walls of the ship pulsed faintly, veins of bioluminescence coursing through them like arteries. It was undeniably alive, though its breaths were labored, its very structure groaning under unseen weight. "Stay sharp," Mason ordered. They moved cautiously through the ship's corridors, the flickering lights casting eerie shadows. Logan carried a plasma rifle, his cocky grin replaced by a wary scowl. Ethan held a portable scanner, his eyes fixed on the readings it displayed. "This isn't just a ship," Ethan said quietly. "It's some kind of hybrid, part machine, part organic. Whatever's in here, it's killing it from the inside out." A distant screech echoed through the halls, a sound that sent a chill down their spines. "I don't like this," Logan said, his grip tightening on the rifle. They rounded a corner and came face to face with the source of the sound. The parasites were grotesque, their bodies a sickly amalgamation of chitin and muscle. They clung to the walls, their limbs burrowing into the ship's flesh, feeding on its life force. One turned its eyeless head toward the humans, mandibles clicking in a sound that could only be described as hunger. "Logan, fire!" Mason shouted. The corridor erupted in light and heat as Logan opened fire, the plasma bolts tearing through the parasite's body. The creature screeched and writhed before collapsing, its acidic blood hissing against the floor. "Keep moving," Mason barked. "We need to find the ship's core." Deeper into the ship they went, encountering more parasites with each step. Logan's rifle grew hot from overuse, and Mason's tool belt lightened as he deployed makeshift traps and barriers to slow the creatures. Ethan worked furiously with his scanner, mapping a path to the core while dodging attacks. Finally, they reached it, a massive, glowing heart of energy pulsating weakly within a chamber overrun by parasites. The ship's voice returned, this time louder, more coherent. "Save me. Destroy them. We can't just kill these things," Ethan said. "They're too entrenched. We need to cut them off from the core entirely." Mason's mind raced. He studied the core, the parasites, the ship's design. Then, inspiration struck, a solution born of necessity and desperation. "Ethan, can you rewire the core to overload the bioelectric pathways around it?" Mason asked. "It's risky," Ethan replied. "The core could destabilize." "Do it anyway," Mason said. "If we don't, this thing's done for." Ethan hesitated only a moment before diving into the work, his hands moving with precision as he rewired the alien systems. Mason and Logan held the line, fending off parasites that grew more frenzied with each passing second. The core began to glow brighter, its pulses quickening. The parasites shrieked, their bodies convulsing as the bioelectric surge coursed through the ship. One by one they fell, their connection to the core severed. When the last parasite collapsed, the ship let out a deep, resonant sound, a sigh of relief. Its lights grew steady, its walls regaining a faint, healthy glow. Mason wiped the sweat from his brow, his chest heaving. "It's not over," he said. "We've stopped the bleeding, but this ship's far from fixed." The ship's voice returned, clearer than before. "Thank you. Help me fight, asterisk asterisk." Ethan looked at Mason, his expression grim but resolute. "I think we just got ourselves a new mission." Mason nodded, his gaze lingering on the ship's glowing core. "Let's get to work." The Vanguard pulled away from the docking port, its crew battered but victorious. Behind them, the alien ship loomed, a wounded giant, but one with the potential to become something far greater. Mason crouched near the alien ship's core, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool air circulating through the makeshift workstation they'd set up. The ship, now silent but alive, seemed to watch him. Its faint bioluminescent pulses reflected his own heart's rhythm. He'd never worked on anything like it, a biomechanical marvel far beyond human engineering. Every tool in his kit felt crude against its organic components, yet his hands moved with confidence born of necessity. Behind him, Ethan Hawke sat at a console scavenged from the Vanguard, surrounded by glowing data streams. His fingers danced across a keyboard as he parsed the ship's damaged systems. "The bioelectric pathways are stabilizing, but only just," Ethan said, his voice clipped. "We've bought time, not a solution. This ship's heart is failing." Mason tightened a cable and stepped back, wiping grease onto his coveralls. "We need to get it combat ready, not perfect. If what it's saying is true, we'll have company soon enough." The ship had shared fragments of its past, a tale of war against a species called the HFY, whose parasitic offspring had nearly consumed it. Those same creatures had overrun the ship's systems, leaving it defenseless and adrift. Now, Mason and his team had to transform the alien behemoth into a weapon, knowing the HFY would return to finish what they'd started. Logan Price paced nearby, rifle slung across his shoulder. "I still don't trust it," he muttered. "A ship that talks and fights wars. Feels like we're strapping a saddle on a wolf and hoping it won't bite." "It doesn't have a choice," Mason said, not looking up. "And neither do we. Without this thing, we're sitting ducks out here." Logan snorted but didn't argue. His confidence, usually unshakable, seemed rattled in the ship's alien presence. Ethan leaned back from the console, exhaling sharply. "I've isolated the parasite's residual coding in the ship systems. If we can purge it, we might regain access to its full arsenal. Problem is, it's written in a language I barely understand." Mason nodded toward the ship's core. "Can you interface directly? Use its AI to guide you?" Ethan hesitated. "It's risky. The AI is intelligent, sure, but it's also damaged. If I connect, there's a chance it might override my input, or worse." "You think you can handle it?" Mason asked, his tone even but firm. Ethan met his gaze. I don't see another option. While Ethan prepared to interface, Mason turned his attention to the ship's external weaponry. The once powerful systems were now dormant, their organic metal hybrid cannons encrusted with parasitic residue. Mason's task was to restore their functionality and retrofit them with human technology, a delicate balance of precision and brute force. Logan joined him at the weapon bay. You think these things can punch through a KRYTH warship? He asked, eyeing the alien cannon skeptically. They have to, Mason replied. He examined the pulsing conduits feeding into the weapons. This ship was designed to destroy fleets. If we can get even half its systems operational, it'll make Earth's best ships look like toy boats. Logan smirked. Toy boats with teeth, though. Focus, Logan, Mason said, but there was a hint of amusement in his voice. Meanwhile, Ethan connected to the ship's AI, his mind threading into its fragmented consciousness through a neural uplink. The interface was overwhelming, a torrent of alien data and emotions crashing over him like waves. He gritted his teeth, focusing on the task at hand. Ship, Ethan said aloud, his voice steady despite the chaos in his head. Can you guide me through the purge protocols? The ship's response was immediate, its voice resonating both in the air and within Ethan's mind. Yes. Sharing pathways. Warning. System instability detected ****. I'll manage, Ethan muttered, sweat trickling down his temple. As Ethan worked, Mason and Logan encountered their own challenges. The alien ship's weapons were as temperamental as they were advanced, requiring intricate synchronization between its organic and mechanical components. Mason's human tools weren't enough. He had to improvise, crafting custom interfaces from scavenged parts. Hand me the plasma torch, Mason said, his voice calm despite the pressure mounting around them. Logan passed it over, watching as Mason welded a makeshift coupling into place. You're too calm for a guy who's basically Frankensteining an alien death ray, Logan said. Worrying doesn't fix problems, Mason replied. He paused, checking the connections. Besides, this ship's not the only one fighting for survival. Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden tremor that rippled through the ship. Mason steadied himself against the wall as lights flickered around them. Ethan, what's going on? Mason shouted into his comm. The purge is working, but the KRYTH left failsafes in the system, Ethan replied, his voice strained. It's fighting back. I need more time. You don't have it, Mason said, returning his focus to the weapons. Logan, get ready to test fire these cannons. If they fail, we'll need to move fast. Ethan's hands trembled as he navigated the ship's corrupted pathways. The AI, sensing his determination, amplified his efforts, stabilizing critical systems even as fragments of the KRYTH's code resisted. With one final surge of focus, Ethan executed the purge, severing the last remnants of the parasite's control. The ship shuddered violently, then stilled. Its bioluminescent veins glowed brighter, pulsing with renewed energy. Ethan slumped in his chair, breathing heavily but triumphant. Purge complete. Systems restored. We are ready, ***. Mason and Logan stood before the restored cannons, their surfaces now gleaming with integrated human technology. Mason keyed a command into his tablet, and the weapons hummed to life, their energy readings off the charts. Well, I'll be damned, Logan said, his grin returning. Mason allowed himself a small smile. Let's hope they work as well as they look. Ethan joined them, his face pale but determined. The ship's systems are back online, but the KRYTH will know we're here. We've got a window to prepare before they come for us. Mason looked at the glowing core, then at his team. They were battered but unbroken, each man carrying the weight of the mission in his own way. Then we use that window, Mason said. We're not just fixing a ship anymore. We're building a weapon that can win this fight. The ship's voice resonated through the chamber, its tone imbued with a newfound strength. Thank you. We will fight together. Mason placed a hand on the console, his resolve unshakable. You'd better, because if we lose, there won't be anyone left to fight for. The alien ship, now christened Leviathan by its human saviors, drifted silently at the edge of the asteroid belt. Its massive frame radiated a faint, steady light, its systems humming with restored life. Mason Cross stood on the command deck, the glow of the ship's displays reflecting off his rugged face. The repairs had been completed in record time, but he knew better than to let hope take root just yet. "How long do we have?" Mason asked, his voice steady but low. Ethan Hawke scanned the monitors, his fingers flicking across the controls. "Not long. The KRYTH fleet is moving fast, 6 warships, each bristling with weapons. If they find us before we're ready, we'll be ready," Mason said firmly, cutting him off. He turned to Logan Price, who stood by the viewport, plasma rifle in hand. "Logan's status on the weapons?" "Primed and nasty," Logan replied, flashing his trademark grin. "Cannons are running hot, and the secondary defenses are good to go. If these KRYTH want to fight, we'll give them one they'll never forget." Mason nodded, his gaze hardening as he looked out at the endless void. The Leviathan was a marvel, but it was also untested. Every system they'd repaired, every weapon they'd modified was a gamble, and the stakes were as high as they could get. The ship's voice broke the silence, resonating through the chamber like a low, melodic hum. "Enemy vessels approaching. 32 minutes until engagement, ****. Ethan straightened. "They're faster than expected. We'll need to draw them into the asteroid field to level the playing field." Logan snorted. "You call 6-to-1 odds level?" "I like your optimism, Hawke." "Enough," Mason said. "Ethan, get the targeting systems synced with the ship's AI. Logan, prep the forward batteries and keep an eye on those asteroids. If they get too close, we don't want debris tearing us apart before the KRYTH do." The team moved with practiced efficiency, each man falling into his role. The air was thick with tension, but there was no room for hesitation. This wasn't just a battle, it was survival. The KRYTH ships appeared on the radar as crimson blips, their formation tight and predatory. The creatures were known for their cunning, and Mason could almost feel their cold, calculating malice through the screen. As the enemy fleet closed in, Leviathan let out a low, resonant hum, its core glowing brighter. Mason could feel the ship's resolve, its desire to fight alongside them. It wasn't just a machine, it was an ally. "Here they come," Logan said, his voice a mixture of excitement and dread. The first shots came from the KRYTH, bright streaks of energy slicing through the darkness. Mason shouted orders, and the Leviathan responded with a grace that belied its massive size. The ship twisted and turned, its cannons firing in synchronized bursts that lit up the void. "Direct hit." Logan whooped as one of the enemy ships faltered, its shields flickering under the assault. "Don't celebrate yet," Ethan warned. "They're adapting." The KRYTH shifted their formation, their ships darting through the asteroid field with unnerving precision. They returned fire, forcing the Leviathan to maneuver even more aggressively. Mason gritted his teeth, his hands gripping the command console as he barked out orders. "Ethan, deploy the EMP mines." "On it," Ethan replied, his fingers flying across the controls. Small, glowing orbs launched from the Leviathan, scattering through the asteroid field like fireflies. Moments later, they detonated, releasing waves of electromagnetic energy that disrupted the KRYTH's systems. 2 enemy ships veered off course, crashing into asteroids and erupting in fiery explosions. "That's 2 down," Logan said, his grin widening. 4 to go. The remaining KRYTH ships adjusted, their weapons focusing on the Leviathan's weak points. The ship shuddered under the assault, alarms blaring as sparks flew from overloaded consoles. "Shields are holding, but barely," Ethan reported. "We need to take out their leader. The others are following its commands." Mason nodded. "Logan, target the lead ship. Full power to the forward cannons." Logan's hands moved with practiced ease, his aim steady despite the chaos around him. The Leviathan's main cannons roared to life, twin beams of energy slicing through the void. The lead KRYTH ship tried to evade, but the Leviathan was faster. The beams struck true, tearing through the enemy vessel's hull. The explosion was blinding, and for a moment, everything was silent. Then the remaining KRYTH ships broke formation, their movements erratic and disorganized. "They're falling back," Ethan said, disbelief coloring his tone. "We've got them on the run." Mason didn't relax. "Finish the job. We can't leave any of them alive." The Leviathan surged forward, its weapons unleashing a relentless barrage. One by one, the KRYTH ships fell, their debris scattering like ash in the wind. When the last enemy vessel was destroyed, a heavy silence settled over the battlefield. Mason exhaled slowly, his shoulders relaxing for the first time in hours. He turned to his team, pride evident in his expression. "Good work, all of you." Logan let out a triumphant laugh, slapping Ethan on the back. "You see that? We just took on 6 KRYTH warships and came out on top." Ethan smiled faintly, though his exhaustion was evident. "We had help," he said, nodding toward the ship's core. The Leviathan's voice filled the chamber, its tone warm and grateful. "Victory is ours. Thank you, friends, ***. Mason stepped forward, placing a hand on the console. "Don't thank us yet. This was just one battle. The war's far from over." The ship pulsed in response, its lights growing brighter. Mason knew they'd accomplished something incredible, but he also knew the KRYTH wouldn't stop. This was only the beginning. "Ethan, start repairs," Mason said. "Logan, run a sweep for survivors. We're not taking any chances." As the crew set to work, Mason stared out at the void, his mind already turning to the challenges ahead. They had won the day, but the future was uncertain. All he knew was that humanity, and their unlikely ally, would be ready.